You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 100. Stay tuned. Hi, you guys. Can you believe it? It's episode 100. Technically, it's actually episode 103 or 104 or something, but for real episodes, it is 100. I just want to say thank you guys for showing up every week and listening, supporting the show, and just being such loyal listeners and loving me even in my imperfection. This last couple years has been such a joy, even through the subject matter, the heavier subject matter that we discuss on this show. It has been my honor to serve you guys and to talk with you guys. And you guys have really been with me on my own journey. I have poured my heart and my soul, everything into these episodes. I have grown with the show and you guys have grown with me. And I could not feel more grateful and more loved. I've had a few of you actually reaching out this week and a little bit last week too, and today especially, with texts and some messages, just words of encouragement and, thank yous, gratitude and whatever. And I just want to say to all you that did reach out, thank you so much. You all know who you are. And I really want to take this opportunity right now to thank you guys. I feel like I'm at an awards ceremony, but I want to take this time right now to thank you guys. You guys have been here throughout all of it. I mean, I can remember some of those rougher patches of last year, especially where, when Pepper died and then Nita too, my pig, it was rough for me. It probably did show through in the episodes, but I'm so grateful for you guys for being here with me throughout this time. And even if you just recently started listening, I just want to thank you. And in order to thank you, I have spent so much time. I have time blindness, you guys. I always grossly underestimate how long it's going to take me to get projects done. And one like this, where I wasn't actually creating content, it was already there for me, doing this best of and collecting all the clips. It was so hard though, because I haven't listened to these episodes, especially the early ones, since they came out, And so going back was a pleasure for me to go back and see how the show has grown. And then also some of the things that I spoke about that I just forgot, whatever. But also it was like I was falling down rabbit holes throughout this whole time collecting all these clips and what have you. So I will say that it has been a labor of love. Collecting these, doing the best of volumes. There are more than one because there's 100 episodes and I have the gift for gab. So at least 2, if not a third. So anyway, I really do hope you enjoy the best. I kind of think these are great because I like it when other podcasts do it, because you get all of the good info, all bam, 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 right at you. So I don't know. I just think they're fun. But anyway, and powerful, can be quite powerful. So I hope you feel the same about this. Again, for the zillionth time over, thank you so much for being such a loyal listener. And I'm going to get on with the show. Listen, you guys, the new course is set to open in October, early October, first week of October. So if you can continue to, if you haven't already, put your answer into the poll, your response into the poll. I'll put the links down below for the Spotify link and also for the website. You don't have to, if you've already responded to the poll, you don't have to do it again. In fact, I encourage you not to, unless you've changed your mind. Once is enough. I just want to be able to log how many people, what we're working with, so I can figure out who wants what. You know what I'm saying? If there's more people that are on the self-study or more people want the more community atmosphere and the small group coaching. So I just encourage you to not vote more than once. And but please vote. So both links will be below. And now I'll let you get onto the episode. Looking back on it, I think I fought every aspect of my life long before the alienation began. Alienation was just the most difficult thing that I had ever been through. I felt threatened. I felt bullied. I felt all of the icky feelings, activated feelings you could have, panicked. I felt that way. And if his intention was to make me feel intimidated, he did his job. Absolutely. But even then, feeling intimidated by him was not a big deal, right? I could handle that. I mean, I didn't like it. It was definitely not comfortable, but I can handle that. But when somebody is threatening your child's welfare, your child's ability to have a carefree, healthy childhood and to be free to love and be loved by both parents, that is a big deal, right? So it makes perfect sense that you would feel activated when the email ding comes to your phone, right? You know that there's emails or messages sitting there, but you just don't want to open them because you're scared of what might be in them. You don't want to read the insults one more time. You don't want to read that you are irresponsible and not a good person, not a good parent, on down the line. I mean, and who does, right? Nobody wants to open up any email or open up a door or pick up a phone and hear that. There wasn't so much information on the internet. I didn't know that there was a name for it. I just know that shit was really weird. It was like Twilight Zone. I was like, am I to blame here? Like, I couldn't figure it out. I knew it was wild, it was exhausting. I was constantly in a state of emergency, but I didn't even know how to bring it up to other people so that I could feel supported. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago. I think maybe it was about post-traumatic growth, when they were talking about when you're experiencing the symptoms of grief, the best thing that you can do is have support. The human connection is one of the most healing things in the early stages of your grief, right? But this is one thing that we don't have. I know for me, I didn't know who to reach out to. It kept me in a stress response 24/7. I had the constant feeling of turmoil inside of me, this impending doom. So that is why when she was gone, I promptly got my ass to the bar so that I could alleviate the symptoms. So I had this disbelief or this denial going on. And then I had that, what did I do to deserve this? How could this be happening to me? Why me? I'd never felt so victimized in my entire life. And I know you guys can relate to that. And I may have always chosen the hard road, but nothing in my life was even close to this experience. It makes sense now why I acted and reacted and didn't act at all and ended up sort of becoming a hermit with my social life, because I felt so misunderstood and so attacked on so many levels. Depending on how much time you have in between your child being home and your child not being home, it's going to take time to unlearn. And even just saying that, my heart broke a little bit, because I know that also acknowledging that that is what you're doing can feel scary and off-putting. Like, no, I don't want to unlearn those habits because I want those habits back. And I get you. I feel you on that. And I think this is why we suffer so much, because we know it is possible to have those experiences. It could be possible physically. Our children are still on this earth. So we don't want to unlearn thoughts and feelings associated with our kids being home. I was consumed with the what ifs, wondering and worrying, truly concerned. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to stop the scenarios from playing. If you're feeling miserable because of the awful stories that you're telling yourself, then you want to remind yourself that this is just natural for your brain. See, the brain is in the moment trying to anticipate what could come. This is a helpful function of the brain, but it's not being applied in a helpful way. Unless you direct it, it will go into this mode. You want to notice it and narrate it. This is anxiety. This is worry. It makes sense that I'm feeling this because I love my kiddo and I want what's best for them. I'm telling myself these stories in my head because it's my brain's way of trying to protect them. And I also know that I have instilled the beliefs and the values and all that I knew how to do when I was actively parenting them. I trust that what I have instilled and what has been instilled otherwise is exactly what they need to get to where they need to go. The moral of the story is anxiety does not have to run your life. And honestly, I refuse to allow anxiety and worry to run my life like it used to. I'll catch myself saying things like, I'll be happy once my daughter realizes what has happened and she is on the mend. Then everything will be able to go back to normal. Life will be great. And it makes sense. It's completely understandable that this is what I would venture to say all of you want. You just want to be able to see your kid, hug them, reconnect with them. I agree. I am with you. But if we're telling ourselves that by just having those things, that is what will make us happy, then we're going to be in for a big disappointment, a huge disappointment. Because if you're relying on somebody or some alignment of the stars to make you happy, you're always at the other person's or the other cosmic event. You're always at that thing's disposal. And that's not any fun. When we feel helpless or feel out of control, we don't find happiness in that place. We don't find contentment in that place. Joy, giddiness, delight. We definitely don't find delight in feeling powerless. I'd say sorry to burst your bubble here, but I'm not sorry at all. If you didn't know this or haven't made this connection already, then I would say you're welcome. From here on out, you will have so much more control in your life. The thing about shame is it will have you believe all of those things you're being accused of. It convinces you that you are just as bad, if not worse, than what the alienating parent is saying about you. Shame sounds like they're right. You are a piece of shit. You are damaged goods. Maybe you are dangerous for your child. Shame sounds like you never should have done that. You should have known better. You know, all of the Monday morning quarterback sort of comments, it's the mechanism installed in all of us that wants to keep us away from trouble, away from risk of embarrassment, of danger, really. But what shame does is the opposite of protecting us. When you learn what your shame triggers are, then I think it can be helpful because then it pushes you to evolve. When we learn how to be in discomfort, we grow, always. You don't need to rely on your child to come back in order for you to feel anything. So if you want to feel peace, joy, whatever, you can provide that for yourself today. Instead of focusing on what the alienator is doing, focus on you and your steps. I know you guys are probably like, yeah, Shelby, but that's easier said than done. Yeah, it is easier said than done. It absolutely is. I'm not going to tell you it's a walk in the park. It's difficult. I mean, you've basically your whole life been brainwashed to believe that happiness lives outside of you and that you have to go searching for it in a car, in a drink, in a status, in a job. So now to experience true happiness, you have to learn how to provide that for yourself. You have to relearn how to think. Yeah, it is easier said than done. But I also know you can do it. If you want it, you can do it. This is no small feat. What we are dealing with as alienated parents is one of the hardest things a person could ever go through in their entire life, truly. And if we can do this, we can do all of the other things. It qualifies us to be able to like kick ass and take names with anything else. This is like the daddy of all things. So if you're already called to be doing this, this is what is happening in your life, alienation. You have proved to yourself that you can do difficult things. And if that means that you just need to redo some of the faulty programming that was instilled or installed in you at an early age, then you can do that if you want. I just don't know the downside to believing that happiness isn't in a bottle. Happiness doesn't come from when another person does a thing. Whether we're talking about our children or your partner, doesn't matter. Happiness does not come from anything external. If you focus on the have-nots in your life, you are going to be unhappy. You're going to be angry, maybe. You're going to feel slighted, taken advantage of, beaten up, used, abused, betrayed. And if you focus on the haves and what you are creating, how you are providing for yourself, how you are growing through this, look at everything I've been through and look what I've done with my life. Yeah, I'm still ticking. That, to me, that's admirable. That is like badass. The person that can have gone through hell 4 times over and come out and still have a sparkle in their eye because they focus on what it is they have. And even if you have nothing at this moment, what am I creating? What are you cultivating yourself? Because when you're focused on somebody else bringing you the happiness, the relief, love, it's always going to be a disappointment. It's a losing battle. I'm telling you, it's a losing battle. Each morning, before I could even open my eyes, I know you guys can relate to this, that moment, when you wake up and you haven't yet opened your eyes and the pit in your stomach because you realize where you are and what is happening. Every morning was like clockwork, right? Today, I'm still dealing with alienation, but I am not physically ill. I don't feel physically ill anyway. Today, I am not suffering the effects of any sort of depression or anxiety. I get anxiety here and there, but I don't have the everyday effects that I did back then. The circumstance is still the same. It's just how I've chosen now to approach it. And it means everything. Because I could have stayed in that old way, right? I may have died. Seriously, I don't know how long I could have actually sustained it, but getting my ass in gear became more and more alluring to me because of the pain. So much resistance, so much of the victimhood, feeling like I got the raw deal. And I was so sick of it. I was so sick of myself. I was so sick of complaining. I was so sick of hearing myself. I was so sick of being stuck. I could not take it anymore. I couldn't take one more dead end. I couldn't take not being able to pay one more bill, avoiding one more phone call, because there was a point where I developed this social anxiety where I couldn't pick up a fucking telephone to answer hello. Not even to towards the end, I wasn't even answering it for my parents. Right? I would screen the call and then gear myself up to call them back. And sometimes that took a couple weeks. I was in a place. The only person I would show up for is my daughter. And that was it. I looked so sickly, so disheveled, really. I didn't shower for, sometimes 7 days. And I didn't even realize that I hadn't showered because it was just me. I was like a crazy artist living up in the hills in Texas on a lake. And I talked to the deer. The deer were my friends, literally. I drank a ton. I was a recluse. And the thoughts that I had and the way that I was living was it was like the world was against me. Of course, that's what I was perpetuating, was that I was dealt the bad hand of cards. The whole deck was bad. You ask me, whatever got dealt my way was just shit. I do understand this is not easy shit. When it comes to our own children, it is not natural. I know it's not how we've been raised to believe that parenting should be. It is challenging as fuck. There is no minimizing that. And you can do it. You can do difficult things. You can. Everything is figure-outable. Marie Forleo. It is everything. So yes, I will say it again and again. Alienation is probably the hardest thing that you will ever have to go through. But don't make it harder on yourself. Don't. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. You're focusing on those outside circumstances. And if you're looking for your kids, your ex, the custody evaluator, or whoever to come serving you happy, pleasant emotions on a platter, you're going to be shit out of luck. Nobody's going to come serving you the pleasant emotions on a platter. You provide you with every emotion that you experience in this entire life. Now that you are aware of that, you can start to go to work on cultivating them yourself. People want to put people in boxes and be like, oh, they must have done something awful if they've lost their kid or if their kid is rejecting them. They want to make sense of it. Shame is that secret that you're like, I must protect this at all costs. It's that one that you've gone to a lot of effort to try to keep it secret. Because a lot of times our brain is on a default setting and it's like, nope, we're not talking about that one. That one goes down in the dungeon and we're going to push it down and we're just going to put boxes on top and we're never going to talk about this again. We've all done this. Pull the boxes away and find those secrets and be like, this isn't that big of a deal. Other people have felt this too. Other people have done whatever it is that I'm shaming myself for, normalizing it. It does help to share it with somebody that you trust or somebody that you think might have had the experience. People will surprise you. Some people that you would think would never do some of the things they've done have done the craziest stuff. Every person that has walked the face of this earth, mentors, teachers, parents, siblings, everybody has felt shame, not just one time, like numerous times. In order to succeed at most things in life, we are going to end up feeling shame. So when you frame it that way, then it might help you to think like, oh, right, this is shame. And you know what? This is part of the human experience. I'm going to feel shame. The next person's going to feel shame. Everybody can relate to feeling shame. Many people don't have the awareness, but everybody knows feeling like they're not enough. A lot of times, because they're really there to protect us, the lower brain will take over. That is its job. Your limbic system, the thalamus, like the mail sorter of all experiences that happen, all information goes in and it decides whether it's going to send it to your prefrontal cortex, the executive functions, or it will send stuff to your lower brain for emergency and survival needs. It's often and by default, because if you've been in a lot of stressful situations throughout your life, it is going to send things to the back of the bus, to your lower brain. So you need to actively employ your executive functions by asking literal questions that the lower brain can't answer for you. Is it true? How do you know that it's true? That's a Byron Katie thing. How could the opposite be true? What else could be true? What about this is their story? And what about this is my story? You can consider it like a game. What part of what they're saying is true? Even if it's just like 0.5%, and not worrying about what you think that they're going to receive by you owning it. Whatever their intentions are doesn't fucking matter because it's not about them. It's about you. I'm doing this because this is like the key that fits the lock that gets me to the next area of where I feel that much more free. There is a dun 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 thought in your head. Call that out. What about what they're saying? Am I scared is true? What am I fearful of there? What is the story I'm telling myself about myself because of what they're saying? Open it up and simplify it as much as you can. Because when we are feeling bullied or feeling threatened, it's usually a very vague thing that's happening, or it doesn't fully make sense. If there are areas of your own boundaries that, has some holes or needs some maintenance, then it's a good time to look at those and be honest with yourself. Because the thing is, if you know that there are some holes in your fence, think of it as a literal fence. If you know that there are holes in your fence and you've got predators in your area, you're constantly going to be on the lookout and you're going to be freaked out and feeling threatened by many bumps in the night, right? But if you have patched up all the holes and you are aware of it because you have walked the circumference of your property and checked for the holes, then the bumps in the night are not going to bother you as much. I would bet all of the money that I have right now and all of the money I will make in the future on the fact that if you're feeling disempowered now, it is because somewhere inside of you, maybe subconsciously, you are blaming something or someone for the reason why you can't do A, B, or C. Taking responsibility always feels much more empowering and free. Maybe you weren't responsible for the acts that have happened in the past. Like it wasn't your doing, but you are responsible for your healing. When I am taking responsibility, right? It's the ability to respond in the way that you want. This is empowerment. It is a much different feeling than when I'm pointing the finger and blame. Right? When I'm saying, oh, no, it's all their fault. They're the ones, then I'm entirely dependent on them. When I'm taking responsibility and saying, okay, there are things that I would have liked to have done differently. Next time, if there ever is a next time, I know what I would do. I would do A, B, and C in such and such ways. I don't love how they acted. If it's appropriate, I might even say something, but I can't expect them to change. That's not going to help me. Basing my happiness or expecting somebody to do something in order to cause me to feel anything is never an empowering way to go. Instead, if I'm taking responsibility, then I'm open to change 70,000 thoughts per day. Sentences, basically. that are running around in every corner of your mind at all times of the day, right? When you're sleeping and when you're awake, when you're bored, when you're eating pizza, on autopilot, running on behind the scenes. Here's how I like to picture it. Each one of these thoughts has a partner. I like to imagine them sort of skipping around in your brain, like arm in arm. And on the arm of your thought is an emotion. There's thought, emotion, thought, emotion, thought, emotion. With each thought you have, it triggers an emotion. 70,000 of those a day. And that's why, like, sometimes when you don't know why you feel a certain way, that's because there are subconscious thoughts that are taking place. And then, of course, there's an emotion attached. They're just arm in arm, skipping around up there in the brain, like frickin' frack, 70,000. They may be a lot of the same emotions, but they're still one and one. Whether we are the children that survived the Amazon or whether we are the parent that's being actively alienated from our child or children, a billionaire who is killing it in their business and in all of their things, or the person next door. We live in our own little bubbles, right? Which I think is good and I think it's healthy for so many reasons. But I also do think sometimes that perspective and seeing things from all different views is so necessary. When I think about, my situation of alienation and where I'm at with it, I could, and I did for many years, take the position of feeling lack, feeling like I was given a raw deal, that everybody else's life was normal, but mine was the only one that was, the Twilight Zone Lifetime original movie type of life. And so from that point of view, yeah, it does seem like a unique and crappy deal when we've gone through something like parental alienation and we know that we're not liking the results that we currently have. If you've been suffering in, let's say, like a low-grade depression or even a full-on depression and you can't get out of the anger, you're just obsessing about it and then everything will be fine and you'll be starting to make a life for yourself and all of a sudden something will happen and trigger the whole cycle again. It's like almost like a relapse and you're back into the same thought loops. If this is happening, then we want to start looking at the system that is currently set up in your brain. A thought is based on our own individual models of the world. And a belief is a thought that we have decided to think on repeat. If 90% of our thoughts are repeated and 80 to 85% of our thoughts are negative, then that means 56,000 negative thoughts per day. Then how many negative thoughts have become beliefs about our own selves? So what you're believing about yourself matters. And we often aren't aware of what those things are. If our reality is solely based on information coming in and associating that with our perception of the world and our perception of our own selves and how we fit into that world, then I think it matters an awful lot that we know what those beliefs are and how we really truly are perceiving ourselves. My approach to your healing, my healing in general, it's really, truly the most practical, realistic way to approach it that I've found is to look at your current beliefs. And if they're not working in your life and they're not working for you and they're not getting you where you need to go, then you need to find ones that are. Our hearts have been aching. In our minds, the thought is that our child is missing from our lives, right? That our child was taken from us. We don't get to experience the milestones and the occasions. We don't get to celebrate with them because we have experienced maybe domestic violence and then the abuse associated with alienation and the trauma supposing what our child might be going through. It's natural for us to get sucked in to living in that and that alone. If you can imagine some train tracks, the brain gets on a track of looking for potential catastrophes and where we are lacking, where our life is lacking. And when we do that, we often miss out on the opportunities that are actually plopped right down in front of us. one after another, after another, after another. This ends up creating this vortex of you feeling like the alienator has so much control over you because your life dwindled down to nothing. You can't see the opportunities, even if there were, because you're so hyper-focused on the abuse that has already happened and what could happen in the future. Opportunity was stolen the day that your children were. And I want to offer you that it doesn't have to be so. We are so awful to ourselves sometimes. We're already in a situation where other people are downing who we are. That is why it is even more important for you to be diligent about your own self-love, actively, fiercely being your own champion and loving you for everything that you are, right? In a productive and positive and encouraging way. You are perfect and beautiful just how you are. And any mistakes that you have made in your past, you only made those mistakes because you were thinking a thought. That is it. You didn't make the mistakes because you were bad or you are selfish or you are any of the things that you've been called by the alienator or maybe even your children, okay? That is not why you did what you did. You did those things, whatever those things are. One, because you were trying to protect yourself and or your child, yeah? And because you were thinking a thought. That's it. You were thinking a thought that made it feel like the right thing to do in the moment. Even if you say, well, I was being careless, I wasn't taking all things into consideration. That's okay. Still, every choice that you've made is because of thought that you were thinking. It does not mean that you're bad or that you're irresponsible or that you're any of the things that they're trying to call you. I think this is so important for you to remember and tell yourself every single time you try to go back and say, I should have done it this way. Why didn't I think about this? How come I didn't know any better? Oh, that's because I was thinking a thought. I was thinking a thought that led me to believe that this was the right thing to do at the time. That's it. That's all. And just don't limit yourself. You decide what kind of person you are. You decide who you want to become. I hadn't spoken to my daughter since before her birthday. It was like the mid-May, I think, was the last time I'd spoken to her up until last week. We are at this point in time, we're scheduled for biweekly Zoom calls. About 3 weeks ago, I was waiting for our scheduled Zoom call and it didn't happen. I won't go into all the details, but basically I've been stood up. And last week we got on the call. I was so excited to see my daughter's face. I couldn't contain myself. I was like a little kid before Christmas or like getting ready to go do like his favorite thing. You know, I was just so excited to see her. I hadn't seen her so long. I needed to know, like, she just started driving and, you know, all of the things that every parent wants to know about their kid. She had gone on vacation and she'd done the things. And so I wanted to hear about all of it. Didn't hide my excitement. And she was somewhat closed off when we first started. You know, there was an expressionless face and she was like, you know, very closed off. And I, on the other hand, was like the kid. And I was like, tell me all the things. Blah! And I was so excited just to see her beautiful shining face, right? And her beautiful eyes and her, right? And within the first couple minutes, I think she might have expected, which I don't even know why, you know? Well, I do know why, but it's not typical for me to catch attitude, you know, to be like pressury or anything. But I think she might have expected that of me. Because she was closed off. I think she might have been expecting me to maybe make her feel guilty or something. But I was thrilled just to see her. And within a matter of minutes, her guard completely went down. And we ended up going overtime and laughing and having like just a regular, great, funny, like hilarious actually conversation, just sharing some like really just fun moments together. And I was thinking about it afterwards, how that could have gone much differently. Like it could have been just disastrous. She could have stayed closed off. I could have been like, well, if I could have seen you last week, well, if you would just show up or, oh, you went on vacation with, you know, I could have shown up heavy, needy, leaning, hurt, emote. Right? And I know that doesn't serve me, doesn't serve anybody. And so that's not even like a go-to for me anymore, where once I'm sure it was. It'd be interesting actually to look back on. So I was wondering what the difference was. And I am sure that the reason it went as well as it did is because I did not need her. I did not need her to be or do anything different than who she is. Yeah. And I think I probably didn't in the past practice this so well because I thought that by accepting what was going on, the situation of alienation, that I was giving up my power. I thought that if I normalized it and made it, like admitted it, that it would make it more real and that I'd be giving them permission to continue. And what I realized is that they never needed my permission to do the alienation to begin with. They were going to alienate regardless, permission or not. And so what my stance was before of like not wanting to accept what is, was really, truly not only hurting me, but it was hurting my relationship with my daughter in the exchanges that we did have. My ego told me that if I act like everything is okay, if I didn't make her feel bad, or if I didn't stand up for what I believed, I was openly giving over all of my power. And tell you, it's just not so. What it did to me was cause me to resist so much good in my life and so much good in my exchanges, not only with my daughter, but like with all the other people around in my life. When I was not accepting the current reality, but even back then, that current reality, and when I didn't normalize it, I was in resistance to what was happening. I was creating this dis-ease within me and within my interactions with everybody. Because then I had all this shame around the alienation because I had not come to terms with it, right? With what is happening, with what has happened. And so then I felt really shamey around other people. I was holding it like close to me and felt like I had something to hide always. And then I felt slighted, like taken advantage of course, by the people alienating my child from me. And so it was just this big fucking fight. I lived in fear. In order for me to let go of the idea that all of these injustices have been done. Now, I can't say let go of the idea because I still believe that I was injustice, as I believe that all of you, anybody that's going through alienation, has suffered some serious injustices, right? I will always remain with that. However, continuing to choose that perspective for how I lived my life on the everyday basis could not continue to happen. Or I would have been in jail again and again and again and again and again. Who would have gotten the best of me then? I could have avoided jail. I could have avoided feeling as stuck for as long as I did in under-earning and not earning at all and staying in a very deep depression for so long. I could have moved from it a lot quicker. If you have that voice wondering, could I find happiness still, even in the midst of alienation? What if I could create an amazing life? It's usually like a little whisper, could it be? If that's there, listen to it. Listen to it. There's a reason it's there. Investigate that for yourself. Could it be? Let's see. Let's check it out. I don't know if there's a downside to that. You could say, yeah, well, the downside is I have spent how long in misery, in so much pain. I've been crying for years. You don't want to have to think about any more healing, any more processing, any more of any of that stuff, because you might just get slapped in the face again. You might get knocked down, and you're not sure if you can take that. Like mentally, emotionally, I don't know if I could even do it again. I can't risk it because I could just, I might not be able to make it through. You ever hear people say that? They'll be like, oh man, I don't know how they're doing it. I could never get through it. Well, of course you could. Of course you could. Given the circumstance, of course you could get through it. So if you've ever said that to yourself, like, oh, I couldn't handle the rejection. I couldn't handle the heartbreak. I don't want to put myself through that again. That's just me being smart. I'm not going to risk my emotional, mental health that way. So I'll just stay here in this ho-hum place for all of eternity. I just want to lovingly nudge you, urge you to question the validity of that line of thinking, right? Of that belief that you couldn't handle the healing because who knows, what if it's not worth it on the other end? We have two choices. When shit goes down, we can either just, this sucks, this is my life now, kick dirt and just survive. Or we can be like, all right, this is a great opportunity, clean slate. What do I want to do with it? And that second perspective, I just don't see a downside. I don't see how it could hurt you by seeing it as a clean canvas for you to paint your biggest and best masterpiece yet. Not that how you were living or doing before was wrong or bad or warranted the situation of alienation. This is another, if I change how I am and if I rebuild myself better than I was, then I'm somehow admitting that my life before warranted being rejected. And that is not the case at all. It's not about them. It is not about them. It's like if your house gets torn down in a hurricane, insurance comes around and the same amount of money either way. You're going to go build it back how it was or build it better. You're going to rebuild it better. We're meant to evolve because shame wants to keep us alone and in secret. When we share that with another person, you know what? I've got a bunch of shame going on right now. Can I share it with you? Telling you, it will do wonders for your shame. It pulls it right away. Like if you bring it out of the darkness and into the light, like here it is, here's my shame. I've been feeling awful all day. This is what it is. It's because I did blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling myself that I am bad as a result of it. I'm telling myself that I am broken. When you pull it out and share that with somebody that you trust, then what that does is makes you a part of. And then shame can fall away because what does shame fester in? It festers in secrecy. And then oftentimes you'll end up having a laugh about it or maybe a cry about it together. And then we move on. Your life will change drastically when you decide to take a risk in one way, just one risk every day. And that could be a little risk or it could be a big risk, okay? But do something outside of your comfort zone every day. Reach out to somebody that you haven't reached out to. Do something that causes you to feel awkward and uncomfortable and put you out there. Go out to dinner with somebody. Sign up for the dating app. Like knowing too that you are risking having the negative emotions. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. You could risk getting hurt, rejection. Yes, those things do happen. But in the end, you're going to have a life that was worth living because you took the risk, because you stuck your toe out there. This, I think, is something that future you will never regret. You must every day. And this is going to sound so plain and simple, but I'm telling you, it will change your life if you're in this spot and you're not already doing it. You must get up every day, make your bed, and then get in the shower, do your hair, whether you're a woman or a man, put your makeup on and put on your, I'm saying this as I'm in my muumuu, but put on your uniform, like power uniform for the day. I don't care if you have nothing planned. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Or if you think that you're not going to see anybody that you know, it makes all the difference in the world to get in nice clothes and look like you're going to work. If you're not, look like you're going to lunch. I have never actually gotten dressed and been like, wow, I shouldn't have done that. That was a waste of time. Never. Okay. So this is important. It will change your mood entirely. Don't just slick your hair back if you're a mom. Don't just slick it back up in a bun. Do your hair. And if you don't have time, then start waking up earlier. Now, if you're still feeling ick after that, which is highly possible, think about the future version of you and what can I do to set her or him up for an amazing day, an amazing week, an amazing month. What little things can I do today that is setting me up in the future? This will help you not only to start focusing on what's going on ahead of you, but also then you'll start to get into the action space in your head as opposed to just going through the motions. You become intentional and mindful in that moment. You start to recruit your executive functions. And when you do that, you feel much better because your lower brain's not running you anymore. I wanted to escape my life, the reality. I wanted to escape the fear that I felt on a regular basis. I was riddled with fear. I put the person who's alienating my kid from me up on this backward sort of pedestal. And I feared that he would use my quote unquote weaknesses in order to take away my rights as a parent. And that is exactly what he did. I made that happen back then because all I was doing was thinking about how I feared him using this stuff. And so then that would make me actually go do it. It's like when you're like, don't hit the window, don't hit the window. Funny, not funny. Hindsight's always 2020. But I know looking back that I didn't want to see what was really going on. Like we always say, why didn't I see the signs? I can see them so clearly now. What was I thinking? Why didn't I pay attention to that? I can tell you with full confidence that I didn't want to see the signs back then. In fact, I am sure there were times where I'm like, I should pay attention to that. That doesn't seem right. I was valuing what I thought I would have by doing whatever I was doing in order to avoid more than paying attention to the thing I should have paid attention to. Hopefully that's making sense. I knew that I was ignoring things. Full on knew I was ignoring things. And at the time, I felt like that was the thing I should be doing. I need to keep ignoring because I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that if I pay attention to it. I don't know if I'm going to have the skills or the tools or the wherewithal to face that. So I'm going to go stick my head in the sand. I was looking for things, activities, people in my life to distract me from the reality of what was going on. But I only made the custody situation worse by pretending it wasn't happening, by looking for excuses to support why I was doing just fine. He's the one that's crazy because I was too busy in judgment and in justifying my behavior because everybody else does it. And so why can't I? Acting like a child back in the day, here I sit today and alienation has taken hold. I do not drag myself through the mud about it anymore. I am okay with it because I decided to be okay with it. I just made the decision. Every time a shamey thought came up, I would just look at it and be like, okay, that's interesting. I see that I'm shaming myself, but I'm going to go ahead and up level this thought because it's not based in reality. I know what I did. I know what I didn't do. And I've learned from that and I'm going to move forward. And so once I could take responsibility, okay, so I did create where I am right now. I did create this. Here I am. I chose the guy who would alienate my kid. I chose the next guy. At the time, I wanted to tell myself, but he presented himself differently. How could I have known? How could I have seen the signs? The signs were there. That's just a story I was telling myself. That is a way to keep me in full victim mode. I didn't want to pay attention to the red flashing lights. The alter reality seemed more attractive. I can absolutely take responsibility for that too. And it feels so much better than going back to the, how could I have known? That lays all the responsibility elsewhere and I can do nothing with that. But when I can say, oh yeah, no, there were signs. There were absolutely signs. I just didn't listen to them. Then it's like, okay, now we know where we can go from here. Because now that I've owned that I created my past, it's believable for me to create my now and my future. Devote all of your attention to serving the new desired emotion. I was talking about this in a recent episode too. Your primitive brain will be like, yeah, but aren't you pissed off about that? I mean, you should be pissed off about that. Or another thing is you'll share the experience with somebody else. And especially when you're new to this work or family members or friends will be like, oh, are you okay? That's horrible. What a terrible experience. I don't know what I would do if I was you. This right there, that is the most toxic thing to fall into. They can say it because they don't, it's fine, right? That's not a problem. But when you feel permitted to start feeling poorly because somebody else says that you should, that is the most disempowering thing ever. To like give in to negative emotion because somebody else suggests that you should. Somebody says that to you, oh, I would feel like shit. I'd be so pissed off. Yeah, I considered being pissed off, but I realized also that it doesn't really help me to do that. It just wastes my energy. So instead, I've decided for me, I've decided that I am a little bit disappointed. Yeah, it is disappointing. I love my daughter. I want to see her, but I'm also at peace with it because I know that I cannot control the situation, right? I cannot physically go there and make her get on Zoom. And if I could do that, then obviously I'd be spending time with her face to face, right? But like, there's nothing I can do about the actions of somebody else, right? So the best thing that I can do is to manage my own mind around it. I really want to change the narrative that we as alienated parents are telling ourselves and also showing to the world, right? This hush, keep silent, our lives are over and we are martyrs. I want that to go away. Look at the language you're using. If you're telling yourself it's too hard, what am I thinking about me that is too weak? Why am I not up for the challenge? Why is this too hard for me to overcome? I can do this. You have superpowers. You wouldn't be given this amazing, ridiculously hard challenge of alienation if you couldn't manage this, if you couldn't grow through this. So you're being called to something more. I believe that we can be alienated parents who are thriving. And at the risk of pissing some people off here, I really believe that each one of us can have and create a better life than what we had before we were alienated, making room for our children to be there when they're ready. But yes, you absolutely can cultivate a better life for yourself. I believe in post-traumatic growth. It's something that I specialize in. And that is that after you go through any sort of trauma-causing event, you can enhance your life as a result. You can experience more joy, more textured emotions. You can thrive where before the traumatic event happened, most of us were living below the veil of consciousness. Before the traumatic event happened, most of us were just going through life, having life happen at us. Now that this happened, you have this traumatic event, and out of it, you bloom. It's like anybody that has a near-death experience. And so, yeah, I absolutely think that you can have a better life, cultivate a better life for yourself following alienation. 100%. Your brain is like a filing cabinet. When you have the feeling of desire, it's going to go back to the thing that last supplied it the dopamine hit, whatever behavior you have, Netflix, candy, cookies, drinking. It knows that you can get a little dopamine hit and you can check out from the current state of your life that you're just tolerating. But that feeling of desire could be for the things that you really deep down want to do. But because you're currently using the surface instant gratification sort of stuff, you're numbing the deeper desires. So much so that sometimes you don't even know what those desires are anymore. Then you have to unpack all that to get to find what it is that you truly desire. So if you feel like you just don't know what your purpose is, like everybody knows what they want to do, how come I don't? Listen, I was there. Well, here's why. Because my brain was so used to the surface desire. This is just the sugar gum or like the fast food quality sort of desires. It doesn't last. Change happens when we have enough discomfort. Like, what is that saying? When the pain of staying gets greater than the fear of leaving, then you'll finally end up leaving. I remember driving down a very windy road in Texas Hill Country whenever I found that quote or some version of it. Dangerous, dangerous. This was years ago. I don't do that anymore most of the time. But I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I think I'm almost there. But I wasn't. Let me tell you what took me so long to get out of that relationship. I was drinking through that whole thing. I could have gotten myself out of that whole mess way before I did. 6, 7 years later, I drank to tolerate the state of my life. So then I never got my ass moving and felt the pain that I was supposed to feel so that I could move out of it. When we use any sort of behavior to make things livable, we're not able to move to our next phase, evolve to our next version of ourselves. So yeah, there's a lot of complexity to this unsupported grief that we experience when we are alienated from our kids. And because we're going through such an intense, unfamiliar type of grief, we're going to have also some real intense, unfamiliar sort of responses to it that maybe we aren't even aware of when it's happening. The first thing that came to mind was Silver Linings Playbook, right? Where Jennifer, what's her name's character in it, her husband died when they were on the side of a highway or something like that. the way that she dealt with her grief is that she went and slept with all these guys, like just one after another, after another, after another. It's so typical for us when we're going through a period of grief and loss that we cover it up by numbing ourselves with some other kind of behavior. And many times, the person who is grieving doesn't even know that they're grieving. Even just going out and seemingly having fun out in public and laughing, carrying on with your own life, onlookers aren't taking into consideration that how the person is acting most often has no reflection on how they are feeling on the inside. People want to be able to put anything in a box and shut it and tie it up into a bow and be done with it. That's the way the brain works. It's not necessarily the person who is trying to demonize or put you in a box. We just want to explain things, put it to bed, and move along. The problem with that is, though, on our side of things, when they fault you for, in this case, your situation of alienation, then they also oftentimes will deem it not necessary for you to grieve, for you to be sad. I like to think that most people aren't doing that to be cruel. I think that just people don't understand how the brain works and really what they're choosing. So they will look at us and be like, oh, well, it's their fault anyway. So if they didn't want that to happen, then they shouldn't have done this stuff. And so then they have no tolerance and don't expect us to need to grieve. And they couldn't be further from the truth. So we don't have the right to grieve. But then when we do act out of the norm for what grieving should look like, then they also have a problem with that. And they're like, well, why are they acting like that if they said that they were so upset? And so they're judging in a contradictory sort of way. What they don't know is that the reason that you could be seemingly continuing on with life or out partying or sleeping around like Jennifer Lawrence's character, that the reason that you might be doing that is as a direct result of the grief and the loss and the stress response that you might still be going through. They're not aware that this is a coping mechanism of yours. My bets are on you that you can handle it. It may not be pleasant, especially when you're telling yourself that you can't handle it. But once you make the shift and start telling yourself that you can handle it, it hurts and there's grief, but you can handle it, bring it on. The suffering stops. The grief stays, the suffering stops completely. Make today your day to declare your own independence. Declare yourself free from the hell that you may feel like you've been living in. How amazing would it be to decide that the person alienating your child from you does not hold any power over you anymore? What would it feel like to know that from here on out, you called all the shots in your life pertaining to how you think about your situation of alienation, how you think about your job if you're working, how you think about your friends and your loved ones and your family, and if you need to make new ones, how you think about that, how you think about your home and your image and all of these other things that come into your life and are interwoven to create the experience that you have on this earth. You want to be out there being as grounded and authentic and empowered as you can, because that, I tell you folks, that speaks volumes. I mean, it's just amazing. You've seen it, like the TED Talks. When you've seen somebody that's processed through something and then can come out the other side and find opportunities for their own growth in it, that is impactful. That's the shit. When you're able to find your own fault and see it for what it is and not feel shameful about it, then go out there. So just be part of the solution and not part of the problem that the alienator presented. If we heal, we think that we are minimizing the pain and the suffering that the alienating parent and or your child has caused. If it looks like you are healed, they're going to think that it's not a big deal what you went through, and you need them to know that it was a big deal. If you stay in your misery, then they'll know what they've created in your life. It's so backwards thinking. We all do it, right? In one way or another, but so backwards because you're actually perpetuating so much more suffering. That might be actually like life altering and not in a good way. You could be staying in this and creating the stagnancy and maybe lack of income. Maybe your relationships haven't gone well because you want them to know what they've done. What I think is so important is that you heal yourself to the best of your ability so you can model what a healthy, thriving, resilient adult is who is acting from love and not from regret or hatred or revenge. It's being a grown, healthy adult so that they see that, because they don't see that right now. They see somebody that is acting out of fear and out of insecurity and out of revenge, right? And this is no judgment passed on the alienating parent. I don't mean it in that way. Truly, I mean, children need models, right? And the more people that they see acting out of love and purity and not feeling victimized and all that stuff, the better off that they are. The grief that I felt due to the disconnect that happened when she would leave my arms and go to his home. As soon as I handed her over into his arms or into his then new wife's arms, I had to shut it off and pretend like I didn't have a child, which was so very strange to me. And so I was grieving the loss of this life that I thought that I was going to always have, right? This role that I would have in my daughter's life, that there would be continuity. This wouldn't be shut on and off like a light switch. I grieved also the idea for her of her parents, the roles that we would have in her life and the normalcy that she was undoubtedly going to be missing. I hated it for her. And so there's a lot of aspects of this grief that we feel, but that very few people understand. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. And that was like the long explanation through it all, is that I wanted to let you guys know that I too was in a really fucking dark place. Really dark place. Awful. And I had really made a mess of my life as a result of the thoughts that I was thinking because of the alienation and because of the dysfunctional life that I had before even the alienation began, which is why I chose my daughter's father and all the things. And I'm glad I did, because at least my daughter is here, on this earth, right? Which I believe was supposed to happen. But my point is, I continually kept making a mess of my life because I was in this fight, right? With myself, really. And so I know what it's like to be suffering. I truly do. I should find a picture from what I was like back then and maybe like a journal entry and post it on my website, because I'm telling you guys, it was a completely different situation. I want to stress to you guys that I have the situation I was in, just a few years ago. It was a mess, and I say that to offer you hope. I want to offer you that maybe, just maybe, you also did not get the short straw. You did not get the raw deal. Maybe, just maybe, you were gifted with something amazing, with something beautiful. It just hasn't been fully unwrapped yet. Like I said, if this doesn't resonate with you yet, circle back to this one, because maybe later it will. It's happened. We're here. This is where we're at, right? Alienation is happening or has happened or wherever you are with it. So what are you going to do with it now? If you stay in resistance to the fact that it's whatever's happened already, if you stay in resistance to that, you're going to be a Shelby on the couch at 1:30 in the afternoon, cracking open your first beer of the day, right? Causing your own physical illness, bad blood work. Or you can decide to utilize it to propel you forward, to build you up. Way more fun. I promise you. It may seem like the worst thing in the world to do while you're in it, because it was a noble reason to fight. Because for me, I thought if I use this to my benefit, I would never ever take that stance. Because if I took that stance, then I was somehow in agreement with it, or I was not doing my injustice justice. Like I wasn't lifting up and displaying the injustices being done correctly. I hope that makes sense. So I needed to leave it as it was. I needed for that to stay that way and for me to stay stuck in order to make sense of it, which didn't make any sense whatsoever. But anyway, so maybe, just maybe, you are the lucky one, okay? Just consider it. Consider how that might be true for you, how you might be the lucky one today. Maybe not the lucky one even. Consider how this could be something that you could use to your benefit. Maybe that your situation is what is going to bring you to being the best version of yourself. And without going through this alienation, you would never actually reach the best version of yourself. Okay. And then you could also trust that this situation of alienation is also bringing your child or children to their best versions of themselves. And I know this one is a jagged pill to swallow. Okay. I do. I know, because doing that work for myself was a tough one at first, right? I really wanted to resist that. There's no way, there's abuse happening and there's, so many bad things happening. Why no kid should go through this. That was huge for me. But I want to remind you too, that suffering has been happening for eons, forever. People have been cruel since they were people. So this shouldn't be happening. This abuse shouldn't be happening. Maybe, just maybe, it is not a helpful thought to think. It may be true that abuse is happening, but maybe choosing to think that it shouldn't be happening isn't helping you, isn't helping your child. Maybe finding a more helpful thought about this is what is going to bring you and your child also to their best version. So I think that there's no downside to thinking that the abuse, it has happened or alienation has happened. Now, how can I make something of this? How can I influence its change? How can I make an impact on my child's life from here? The alternative is that you sit on the couch, that you under-earn because you're stuck in depression. The alternative is poisoning your body with anger and resentment and making yourself sick. The most important thing is that you feel bitter and hurt and helpless and incapable. That is hell. That is hell. That's not you. All of the things I just listed, that's not you. That's your primitive brain trying to keep you safe. So you have to use your executive functions to overcome, make the choice to trust, make the choice to keep trying, to play the hand out, be your own advocate. Talk to you later, guys. See you next week. Okay. All right.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, please make sure to click subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Also, for bite-sized clips and tips, be sure to find me on TikTok or Instagram. See you next week.